Welcome to Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and today I have with me Michele Jech. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. You and I have only known each other, like 2 years?
Yep.
But the time we have spent together has been really informative for me and energizing. So I thought it'd be great to have you on the show. And then my wife's met you at a conference we were at, or saw you again, I should say. And she's like, you got to get Michele on the show. So,
yeah.
So great to have you today.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here.
So where are you hanging out these days? What are you up to?
So I'm here at C12. So C12 is the world's largest group for peer accountability and peer forums for CEOs and business owners. And I've been here for about 19 months now. That's how we met. But I'm hanging out here doing marketing and operations.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, they're blessed to have you from the few minutes we spent together. But just before the show, we were talking about one of the things you're passionate about is communication. Specifically, how do leaders handle feedback or criticism?
Yeah.
And you said you might have a story you could share on that.
Yeah, I am super passionate about this topic, and I've got a lot of experience of skinning my knees and really probably even face plants when it comes to learning lessons on how to communicate well and how to get feedback. Early on in my career, so I was an executive at a Fortune 500 company. And when I went from middle management at a director level and executive director level, and I got into executive management, the part of what the company did was put you through executive training. And so I was sitting there and it was my 9th promotion in 9 years. And so I was on this up and to the right, fast track. And everything that got me here, I had this stark realization wasn't going to get me there. And so I'm sitting in this executive training, and part of it was like, you have to go in and do this pitch and this presentation, and this executive trainer sitting across from you, evaluating what you said. And I get through it and I'm like, man, I nailed that. And I felt great about it. And he sits down and he goes, close your mouth when you're thinking. He goes, does it make you look stupid? And I was like,
that's how he started.
Totally. Like the first thing he said to me. And I was like, excuse me, what? I thought I nailed it. And he's just like, it makes you look stupid. He goes, like, your content was great, but I couldn't hear anything that you said because every time you stop and think, you have your mouth open and you look up and to the right. And he explained that's a natural reaction for searching your brain, all this. He goes, but your mouth is open and it makes you look like you have a loss for words. You don't know what you're going to say. And it's really distracting sitting across from you. He goes, close your mouth and just be silent, pause, and then say what you're going to say. And that was what I call, ouch, that helps feedback, right? But I didn't know it helped at the time. It was just I was taken aback. I was like, they're paying you to tell me these kinds of things? And I had no idea until they made me record myself. And I go, oh my gosh, I do that. And that was 20 years ago. And still to this day, I close my mouth when I'm going to pause and think instead of having it open. So I'm like, I don't want to look stupid to the person sitting across from me. But that was kind of the start of my direct feedback journey. That is a component of feedback that I will never forget, but I always remember. And I also go like, how can I give that feedback to others that would be helpful to create change in them that makes them better received by others?
You mentioned the word helpful. Not all feedback is, and delivery matters.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts around delivery, or like how do you get in that zone to where you got to go give some difficult feedback? None of us want to be jerks. Like all of us want to be liked. It's just a human worry. How do you get yourself? You've had a lot of practice. How would you tell people that struggle with this to get in the zone where you're making sure you're giving feedback the right way?
It's a great question. I believe that when we give feedback to somebody else, like feedback is a gift, because it's really hard to give as a leader. Even though you get a lot of practice, it's still uncomfortable to tell somebody hard news or to give somebody some criticism that you know is going to potentially hurt them. And so there's this balance between how do I make sure that my feedback is helpful to the individual, but it's specific enough where it's actionable. Because what's not helpful is feedback that's not actionable. So let me give you a couple of examples. If I were to be giving you feedback and you just did a presentation, you were really nervous about it. And I would go, hey, Joel, that was that was great. Your content was great. Your slides were great, but you just appeared really nervous and which made you look unprepared. So what happened? That's good feedback. You appeared nervous. You appeared unprepared, but you can't do anything with that, right? That's not helpful.
And when you said what happened, I'm not even being evaluated. I'm already getting defensive.
Absolutely. Because it's just like, wait a minute, but my slides were great and my content was great. And that's what I practiced. But if I were to turn around and say, hey, Joel, your slides were great. Your presentation was great. But something that I noticed is when you were presenting, you did a lot of fidgeting with your hands and you did a lot of like clasping and clapping after every point that you made. And you said, as a filler word a lot throughout your presentation. That makes you come across like you're unprepared. So next time, if instead of you just allowed yourself to take a pause, like the power pause, and move forward. And if you kept a hand in a pocket, or if you tried to do something different with your hands, that would make you come across more confident. That's actionable feedback. You can think about that next time you're presenting. You can think, you're aware of what your hands are doing. It's no longer a blind spot. And that's something that's now within your conscious. So that helps from a feedback perspective, from a feedback standpoint.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think most leaders prepare well for conversations?
Like just normal conversations or feedback conversations?
Feedback conversations.
I think that some people naturally do it better than others, but I really don't. What I have seen in my experience is that leaders are more ill-prepared, not to have the conversation, but because of their perspective maybe going in. There is, no matter what, there is a power dynamic, right? That when your boss is coming to tell you something, and if it's going to be critical, you're on a megaphone when you're a leader. No matter how much relationship you have, it's still going to be hurtful, right? Because you're critiquing somebody's work. What I think is harmful or where the unpreparedness, I would say, comes in from the leader's perspective, is that it's not like we have a tendency as leaders to desire to have ourselves come out of other people. We just have this desire in human relationships to gravitate towards people who are more like me. And we think that our perspective is good and right. We want feedback, but we're naturally going to believe that what we think is better. And so when we approach people with feedback, what we have to do is make sure that we're looking at not giving feedback about how we feel about something that they did, but how we leverage their superpowers, their come-froms, and understand how we can give them feedback that helps them grow in their strengths and elevate their weaknesses. And we can't give it in a way that expects them to be like us. We have to give it in a way that helps them flourish and helps them thrive. And that's just a different mentality going into it.
So there's obviously training people can take, books they can read, all those kind of things. How much do you think the prescriptive helps versus hurts? I'm curious on your thoughts. I have some, but
yeah. What do you mean by the prescriptive? Like what's in your head? Right
when you go to give feedback, give them at least 3 compliments before, like the formula type stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
I am not a fan of the prescriptive at all whatsoever. I'm not a fan of sandwich feedback. I know there's this big debate, like you could read a different book and tell you a different thing on, do we sandwich it? And it's like, here's something you did well, here's something you could improve, but let me make sure I tell you something you did well. Depending on the person that's sitting across from you, they're going to be like, Michelle thought I did great. And they don't take the action that needs the correction. I am more of a fan of, Joel, we need to sit down, we need to have a conversation, I'm going to give you some difficult feedback, put a period on the end of that. And then I will give you compliments when I see you and you get compliments.
Really?
But I am not a fan of the prescriptive feedback. What's your take?
I'm the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to bias just in case. No, I think there's ways for us to learn. So you may, as you're training someone to give better feedback, you may say, try this or try that, or make sure you do it with this posture, this tone, or whatever. Just like the feedback you received, close your mouth, right? It wasn't necessarily that you needed to close your mouth for the sake of closing your mouth. There was a point behind it.
Right.
But it ultimately got you to a place where you could present more comfortably and give yourself permission to pause, to take away the ums, those kinds of things. So I think it also depends on how much experience people have with giving feedback. They may need somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience might need a little more coaching. And if the sandwich thing helps them get through the first difficult conversation, I don't love the prescriptive, but you kind of got to teach people too. So sometimes we as humans tend to go to formulas.
Yeah.
If it's formulaic, then it's duplicatable, and and so to me, it's more of a heart thing. So that's where I wanted to go with that. Depending on how you answered, is what's the heart attitude I have to get good feedback? What have you seen?
I believe that it is wanting what is best for the other person. I think feedback that's given, especially when it's direct, when it's critique, when it's critical, I believe that is done, and it's a gift in love. So I have two things about this particular point. I'm so biased. My life mission statement, no matter where I'm at, is to unlock the leadership potential in others so they can positively impact the world around them. So my heart posture in every conversation as a leader or as a mentor or as a disciple is, how do I unlock the potential that God's put in you? And I hope that I would see more potential than somebody sees in themselves. And how do I help unlock and unleash that? And sometimes that comes in compliments, and sometimes that comes in encouragement, and sometimes that comes in critical feedback. And so my heart posture is always for, how do I make you better? It's not for what I need you to do right now. It's always from a posture of, this is out of love. And I receive it that way too as a leader. I'll tell those, my leaders and people around me, when you give me critical feedback, and I know that there's a foundation of trust, and your heart posture is that you want what's best for me, then when you tell me things, even when they're hard things and they're hard for you to say and hard for me to hear, it's because you want to make me better. You're helping me grow. And that to me is love. You care about me enough to tell me when I got egg on my face, and nobody else is going to tell me. And I think that heart posture, if that was spread throughout, even if it's a messy conversation and for the right reasons, I think that there's a ton of grace in that. And both individuals will get better in those situations as they learn and as they receive.
Speaking of messy conversations, where does time come into play? Most leaders I meet are waiting for the perfect time to have the difficult conversation. What's your feelings on that?
There is no good time to have a difficult conversation. In my personal experience, the angst that I will have around waiting to have the conversation keeps me up at night more than if I just have it. So to me, the perfect time to have the conversation, especially if it's critical, is right after it's happened. It's just immediate. We left a meeting, somebody said something and it came across a way and the room shifted and they didn't see it. As soon as the meeting is over, Joel, do you have 2 seconds real quick? And I'll just pull you in the office and be like, when you said this, did you notice what happened in the room? What was your intent? What did you mean? Did you see how everybody shifted? I would say it differently next time. And I would just immediately in 2 minutes and just address it. And so since I don't like the formula, there's no sandwich, it's just me super clear. I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm going to give you the feedback right there. And then we'll move on.
I don't know your personality well enough, but do you ever have to sleep on a conversation? Because you're so emotionally entangled.
Yes.
Right. And so your heart posture at the moment is like, I told them 1,000 times, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of leaders, I've actually met some leaders, they have to get emotionally spun up to have the difficult conversation because they don't want to have the difficult conversation. So have you ever seen that, or
I've seen that and experienced that. I personally am a little bit different. I like to process and I like to take time to process. So I've when it's a really good distinction. So if it's something that's tangible and actionable, I think that immediate is right. You make a really great point. There are times where I'll be feeling something and I'll feel away. And I'm like, okay, I know my reaction is unequal to what's actually happening right now. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, I'm self-aware enough to go, and we have some leaders here that'll be like, Michele, what are you thinking? Like, I can see that you're thinking about something. And I'm not quite ready to speak about it just yet. I need some time to process. And I will go, and internally, I have to go, here's how I feel about it. And I have to give myself permission to go, what is that hitting? Why is that not equivalent to what actually happened? Mm-hmm. Remove feeling from it and go, what is true and what is actionable? And then how do we move forward? And I think those happen when there's trust and relationship. When it hits trust and relationship, not action and how you came across in a meeting, or the slide deck wasn't prepared, or, when it's not tangible. Mm-hmm. I think that's really wise to be able to do that.
Well, what about, do you see any generational differences? Do you have to, because people are always picking on generations, so I have to ask this frequently in my podcast, do you have to communicate differently with your baby boomers than you do with your alphas?
Yes, but I might have my experience is I actually think my alphas and my Zers receive it much better mm-hmm. than my boomers do. And even my Zers and older millennials. I think I don't know why. I don't know if it's a hunger to learn versus a set in my ways and it's always worked, or if it's more personality differentiated, because I think there's that layer too. But I do see a generational difference. And it is actually my younger generations who will come, and I had somebody do this last week and say, you haven't given me feedback in a couple of weeks in a one-on-one. She was like, how am I doing? Like, how about this? How about this? Because they're hungry for it, because it's just helping them learn and grow. Mm-hmm. And I think hunger has to do with it versus was it good? I don't want to hear about it. Like, was it bad? So.
What about when you're new in a position? So you had 9 promotions in 9 years, so you had an opportunity to be new a lot. Yeah. Right? You've been here for less than 2 years. Mm-hmm. Still, not the newbie, but still kind of. Mm-hmm. Let's say, and maybe you've had this for real, or maybe we just have to imagine this. So let's imagine you walk into a new scenario as a leader. There's already your team in place, somebody else hired, but you see there's some changes that need to happen. You haven't built a lot of trust yet. Mm-hmm. Certainly haven't built a lot of rapport. Yeah. What are your thoughts around communication on that?
I've skinned my knees on this and face planted. This is probably the one I face planted on the most. And I believe that giving more time in the first 90 days, and it gets harder as you get further up in leadership because there are different expectations. When you're at an executive level, they're bringing you in to come and make a difference. And you got to make that difference. But you have to be able to establish that trust. And you have to be able to get that foundation in. If not, then it just comes then, especially from a feedback standpoint and criticality, it comes across as just critical. And if we're understanding other people and our heart posture is for their betterment, then we have to understand what they do, what they've poured in, how they're feeling about it, to be able to craft our message in a way that they hear us better. Mm-hmm. And then we have, as leaders, to make hard decisions and move things forward. But that level of understanding and building that foundation, I think, is incredibly critical. And so being able to balance that. And I think that if you're going into a situation where you're new, those are expectation conversations that you should be having with the hiring leaders and your direct supervisors on what their take on that is. So that way there's clarity and it's not a performance issue for you, but you're talking about what you value. Mm-hmm. And you can match that with your style or not.
That's good. Michele, how about we do this? How about let's put a pause here?
Sounds good.
And there's a place I want to go in the next episode, but let's go ahead and bring this one to a close. Is there anything else you wanted to share on feedback in particular?
I think we covered it.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
Right, thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.